אני כמובן אדבר בעברית, ואנחנו מתערבבים כאן גם בשמחה וגם בעצב, וגם בעברית וגם באנגלית. קודם כל אני רוצה לברך את כולכם שבאתם, כמובן את משפחת לדובסקי. אני רוצה להגיד שמשפחת לדובסקי עשתה למעשה את המעשה הכי יהודי שאפשר, והוא להנציח את הזכר של הבן שלהם בצורה הכי יהודית, שזה השקעה בלימוד, ולא בסתם לימוד, אלא בלימוד של מדיניות ציבורית למעשה פועלת לטובת אחרים, לא רק לטובת תעודה כמו שאמר גבי לדובסקי, אלא לטובת אחרים. למעשה משפחת לדובסקי שותפה, אפילו הייתי אומר שותפה בחירה להצלחה של בית הספר, ובית הספר משגשג בצורה בלתי רגילה גם בזכות משפחת לדובסקי. בית הספר בשנה הבאה יאכלס כאן מספר סטודנטים שהוא כפול מזה שהיה בשנה שעברה, ונדמה לי שהעובדה שמשפחת לדובסקי בדרך ההנצחה המיוחדת שלה אפשרה למעשה לתת ל-72 סטודנטים מלגות הצטיינות, וזה ברור לגמרי שהבחירה הייתה בחירה מוצלחת, משום שחלק מהם גם המשיכו לדוקטורט ואחרים מצליחים בדרכם שלהם, כך שהתרומה שלהם היא תרומה מאוד משמעותית. אני רוצה לסיים בדברים קצרים לזכרו של דייגו לדובסקי. הדבר הראשון נדמה לי שלפחות אותי תפס, הוא שדייגו לדובסקי קודם כל רצה להיות ישראלי. ולא רק רצה להיות ישראלי, אלא גם לייצג את ישראל בין אומות העולם. ורציתי לקרוא שיר מאוד מאוד ישראלי לזכרו של דייגו. מי שכתב את השיר הזה הזמיר אכן, אני בטוח שהשם לא אומר לכם הרבה, אבל היא הייתה זמרת בשנות ה-70, היא נולדה ברמת גן לעולים שעלו מלוב, ולמעשה אחרי שאני אקריא את השיר אתם תדעו על מה אני מדבר. השיר הזה הוא מאוד מאוד ישראלי וכולכם מכירים אותו. השיר הוא מתחיל כך: ארוכים הלילות מיום שעזבת, האביב כמו הסתיו כל כך אפור, ובלב זיכרונות מן הסתם כבר שכחת, בתפילה תפילה כמה שתחזור. מה שומם, אני כמובן מתרגש, מה שומם וחדרי מיום שעזבת, השעון של הקיר ליבו נדם, ובודד בפינה הכיסא שאהבת, בלעדיך העולם כה מיותם. והפזמון שאתם, אני בטוח כולכם מכירים, ים של דמעות בשתי עיניי, ליבי זועק שובה אליי. אני מזמין את השגריר רפאל ברצאה.
אחרי הצהריים טובים, ושצריך גם לדבר עברית וגם לדבר את אנגלית. So I'll try to manage to speak Hebrew and English, pero antes quiero decir unas palabras a la familia Ladovsky, que me siento muy honrado de estar acá y con ustedes. I'm a Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I feel that there are lines of similarity with Diego. Diego came to the ministry when I was abroad, serving abroad in 2001. And at that time I was serving in the United States. But I also came to this country as a Zionist. I also went to all these different paths in which I saw Diego going to the army and trying to do social services and helping others. So I feel really identified with this life. It's part of mine because also my first post abroad was Lima, Peru. So preparing myself to address this lecture, I was really touched by things that I discovered, and so I again thank you for the invitation, not only on behalf of the ministry, but personally myself. I feel very touched. Let me tell you a little bit about where we are now at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and what are the three main points in our agenda. Before that, I would like also to thank Professor Daan and Dr. Sperling for the invitation for the organization for this gathering. So we have three main issues in which we are dealing today in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and that they are part of our agenda. The first one is Iran. And we said in the ministry that Iran is the first, and Iran is the second, and Iran is the third and fourth, and so on. We are dealing with Iran in our optic. This is a diplomatic effort that goes all over the world. In a discrete effort in which we are not working ourselves. You know, Israelis are well known to be individualistic, but I have to admit that this Iranian issue, we are working all together, ministries, organizations, services, trying to stop the developing of the Iranian nuclear program. This is our target, this is our aim, and from years already we have been working on that. We continue, and this is on the top of our agenda. Each and every embassy of Israel, each and every diplomat knows every week they have to reassess and say what I'm going to do this week in order to stop Iran becoming nuclear. Today we are giving the, as we call the P5+1, an opportunity, a diplomatic opportunity. We are supporting this opportunity. We are trying to see if a solution will come up that will give satisfaction to the international community, because Iran is not a threat to Israel, but a threat to the international community. We have to recall and remember that there were already 5 Security Council decisions dealing with Iran, plus decisions that have been taken by the European Union, by the United States of America, and other different countries today implementing sanctions and so on and so forth. That continues, and that will continue, particularly in the next weeks. So this diplomatic effort will give us a result. We don't know. To tell you the truth, we are very skeptic. But definitely we are convinced in my ministry that finding a solution that will give us a complete satisfaction and the stopping of the nuclear program. On the other hand, we understand as diplomats that there should be some kind of safe facing for Iran. This will be the less costly solution to this very challenging problem. We are not part of the negotiators, but definitely we are part of the most interested countries, and we have a series of discrete contacts with all the parties that I mentioned, trying to convince them, trying to show our concerns, trying to give them also our insights about Iran, and definitely being the most important effort of the Israeli intelligence community. We're also sharing with them our intelligence. But Iran is a cocktail, I would say, that includes not only the nuclear. And there are another 3 major elements that are important in our big effort. After the nuclear, the second element is the missiles. Iran has developed the possibility and the technology, and today they have the capabilities to send at least more than 300 missiles that can reach not only Israel but also countries in the region and the southern Mediterranean countries. And we are watching this effort because, as you know, having the nuclear weapon is not enough. You need a delivery system, and we understand that they are working very hard to have all those 2 things combined. The third element in which Iran is part of our challenge and strategy is what we call the support of Iran to terrorism. For many years, Iran has been trying to create alternative ways and means in order to challenge Israel and challenge other countries. And we know that in the northern part, in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon, we find today Hezbollah having a very strong support of Iran. This support gave to them at least 50,000 rockets and missiles that can reach half of our country. And this is a continuous threat to our country and to our citizens. The second element that I would like to highlight, it comes from the south. Hamas, and less in the last months and more than with Jihad Islamiyah, a continuous supply of weapons that are going through Iran, south Port Sudan in northern Sudan today, and through different ways and means through the Sinai Peninsula to Gaza. And we see there also more than 10,000 missiles that can reach the southern part of the country. So this implies also a strategic change in our approach vis-à-vis the region. For many years, the confrontations that we had with our enemies, according to Israelis' attitudes, was also to try to bring the war to enemies' territory. Today, this will be, if we hope that not, but if we will have a confrontation, this will be a different confrontation in which the soldiers who are placed in the first row of the borders will not those who will be confronted with the enemy, but the large majority of the Israeli citizens who are citizens in each and different cities will be the targets, because having 50,000 missiles coming from the southern Lebanon, having 10,000 from Gaza, having the 300 from Iran, so the targets and the missiles will be directed to our citizens, who will become the first, will be in the first line of our country, and this is definitely an issue that we are taking care of it. The fourth element, after talking about the nuclear and the missile delivery and the support for terrorism, is the rhetoric. I don't think that I have to explain in this forum at the Hebrew University why here in Israel, when someone is denying the Holocaust, or someone as the military chief of staff of the Iranian army 2 weeks ago said that they have to destroy Israel, we take this seriously. We believe in that, and with this, we see this as a serious threat to us. So those four elements, the nuclear, the missiles, the support for terrorism, the rhetoric, are for us a very strong cocktail that we have to cope and we have to deal with, and we are dealing with that in different methods, in different ways, diplomatically particularly in my ministry, but also with other means in which the State of Israel has its capabilities. So this is for Iran. The second element that keeps us busy in these days is what is wrongly called the Arab Spring. Actually, we decided at the ministry not to call anymore these developments that happened in the last year and a half the Arab Spring, but more to call the Arab upheaval, the Arab changes. And we are following here a very substantial change that is covering all the region, from Morocco to Turkey, I would say. Those changes are changes that they are not related to Israel, were not caused by Israel, and those are elements that came up after even Arab scientists that already wrote about them many years ago, and there are very famous books, one of them that was published by the UNDP in 2003 and 2004, explaining the terrible domestic situation of each and Arab country, the economic divisions, the social gaps, and the necessity to change and to have more transparency, more participation, all the things that we heard in the last year and a half that are coming up as a part of this public discussion in the Arab countries. So we identified in the last year and a half 4 different patterns, I would say, of manifestation. The first one was, I would say, the most calm one, and I can show and tell about Egypt and Tunisia, in which the changes in the government were done in a pacific way, in which things without almost any casualties, with some confrontations, demonstrations, and so on and so forth. But the transfer of government came up and is still an ongoing process, as we see, and we are coming up to the second round of elections next week in Egypt, in a process that is relatively calm. The second pattern of changes in our region are what we call the violent ones. The violent is what happened in Libya, what happened in these days in Syria, terrible things, and also in Yemen. I think I don't have to elaborate here, and we are watching, unfortunately, every day on the TV, these images, particularly coming from Syria. And we see that still changes in Syria are not coming up, and still Assad is feeling that he even can keep and bring back the genie into the bottle. The third pattern of changes that we identify in our region is what we call the cosmetic ones. It's some changes and reforms that are part of the decision of the actual and previous governments. We saw this in Jordan, we saw this in Morocco, and in those countries there were no major changes, and despite the fact that the government were actively expressing the interest to come along with the Rue de l'Epoque and the atmosphere of the changes in the street, no major significant changes came up. And there is a fourth pattern that we identify very clearly, are those countries in which nothing happened. The same situation that we lived in a year and a half ago is the same that is going on today. And this is the main characteristic of Saudi Arabia, of the Gulf countries, in which in a very, I would say, Saudi way, they put $1.5 billion on the table, and with that they got all the calm and all the tranquility they were looking for in order to continue the system. So 4 different patterns of very substantial changes in some of the countries that are affecting definitely our geopolitical situation. I will put aside Iran. I think I spoke about Iran. Iran is still a very important element that try to take advantage of the situation. But I would like to take a few minutes to identify what are the main trends of these changes. I think the first one that we identify is the power of the street. For many years, discussing this in universities and think tanks, and also between our colleagues in foreign ministries, there was this element of the Arab street, la rue arabe, elements that came up that say, well, there is some kind of veto power that we always in Israel refuse to accept. But now, today, definitely there is the Arab street is calling the shots. And if they don't have the initiative, and if they don't have really opportunities and the intensity to present alternatives, definitely they have a veto power and what the governments or the new governments are doing. And so this is an important element that came up in the last year. The second element that I would like to highlight is what I call the green factor. For many years, we saw in our region authoritarian regimes that didn't let other elements in societies to participate. No elections, and if there were elections, they were not real elections, as we know. And there were groups that were side groups. One of them, the most important one, the most significant one, the one that got a very large support, this is the Muslim Brotherhoods that are spread around all the region on the basis of religion, but not only religion, but also on social services that they were giving, schools, education, health, welfare. Those Muslim Brotherhood organizations got a place in society, not in participation and not running the countries, but definitely being an alternative for the government. And definitely, and when we see now that there is a vacuum of government, a vacuum of rulership, of control. So we saw almost in each and every country the Muslim Brotherhoods came into power. First of all, with a lot of cautious movements, and afterwards, when the appetite came up, they identified the possibilities, and we saw them running for elections in Tunisia, running for elections in Egypt, and we'll see definitely if there will be elections, we assume, in other countries, because they were always well organized. They had a long support, a very large support with the public opinion, and they were an alternative. But so for us, it's now a challenge. I have to admit that there is a discussion going on in Israel between the different organizations and agencies about the influence and the future influence of the Muslim Brotherhood. There are those who are saying, well, this is the trend, but it may take years in order to have all these countries converted in what the Sharia is demanding for them and being ruled by the Sharia. We feel at the ministry that we have to be a little bit more moderate in our analysis. Still, we see a very important struggle going on in Egypt. Today, you find definitely the old regime, and we call it in Israel the statehood against the brotherhood. And we saw this also in Tunisia. And in Algeria, there was a total different result against them. So we feel that this is still a movement to watch. We don't feel that tomorrow all the Islamic Brotherhood will cover the region, but definitely this is a challenge. And having religion as part of the, not only of the ideology, but the ways to conduct politics, this brings difficulties, because we know that when politics and religion get together, so this is a difficult element to bring together results, and particularly when we're discussing with peace with our neighbors. The third element that I would like to underscore is the fact that minorities have been seriously affected by these changes and upheavals. They have been persecuted, Copts and Nestorians and religious also minorities. And this is part of the new trend. And the fourth one is also women that definitely they were not fully part of the societies, but at least they got more and more participation in all the Arab societies. Today, due to these changes, we see them more and more put it aside and not given the opportunity to intervene and participate. So we are concerned. We are concerned because at the end of the day, those are our neighbors, and we like to see how these changes will affect us. And definitely, this is a different geostrategic situation in which we are addressing. We are looking very carefully Egypt, in which after 4 or 5 elections, we look with a lot of concern the situation in Sinai. Sinai is becoming a no man's land. All the bad guys are there, Al-Qaeda and other jihadist groups. We see the interest of different groups to try to provoke a border incident with Israel in order to bring us to respond, and this response may bring to the collapse of the peace treaty. So this is part of the tactics. And today we don't see any alternative on the Egyptian side, despite the fact that paradoxically, since all these events started, we have a well-developed dialogue with the Egyptian government today, things that we didn't have a year and a half ago. And this is maybe part of the situation and the way that the Egyptians, the SCAF as is known, the militaries. So we feel that Sinai is becoming a threat, and you know that after 79, we dismantled all the military units that were covering the southern border with Egypt. And today, in which we are approaching the discussions on the budget in this country, and we are talking about cuts about 11 to 17 billion shekels. Again, the batter and cannons image coming back to my old studies in this university on economics is coming to my mind, in which on one hand we'll have to provide more weapons and more money to the army, and on the other hand we have also to deal with the Rothschild's demonstrations and to support also our middle class. So decisions with all these cuts will not be easy decisions. So Sinai and Egypt is a question that keep us busy. The second element, I will say, on Egypt and Sinai, I will add also that weapons are coming not only from Iran but also from Libya. We see a lot of smuggling weapons coming to Gaza from Libya. The second element that we like to underscore is Jordan, in which we still have a very good relation. It's not, it doesn't have a lot of visibility, but we are trying to cooperate, and definitely we see the king as a very important interlocutor, and the situation in Jordan is also very precarious. If you look around Egypt and if you look around Jordan, the most stable and safe border they have is with Israel, not with Libya or Sudan for Egypt, and not for Iraq or Syria for Jordan. With having all this strange and difficult panorama, we have to also to fix our policy. And if you ask us what is the policy of the State of Israel in the last year and a half, I will highlight three main elements that I think that give us the major support. So the first line of policy, we call it at the ministry strategic silence. As I said before, all these events didn't happen for Israel. In Israel, there were no Israeli flags in Tahrir Square. So we were not part of that, and with a lot of humility, we have to admit that events in the region, we have, I would say, not even the mere possibility to influence them. So to keep a distance, not to give statements, to keep our politicians disciplined and not giving statements on the events, I think this is a good policy. We have been implementing this from the very beginning. And from time to time, there are definitely some statements when horrible things come on Syria, but from the very beginning, we adopt this policy of strategic silence. The second element of policy in which we are promoting and working very hard also is to keep our assets. What is this about? It's particularly we have a peace treaty with Egypt, we have a peace treaty with Jordan. We try to keep these assets alive. We are working diplomatically, particularly with friends all over the world, sending messages about the importance of the peace treaty. And those messages that we are sending through all over the world are coming back to Egypt, and they're coming back to all the elements, new elements of the Egyptian society. It doesn't matter what happens in Egypt, but it's important. The peace treaty with Egypt is a corner pillar of Egypt, and this should be continued. So those messages we know that have been already received in Egypt. The second message going on Egypt is about Sinai, the importance of Egypt to keep control of Sinai, and this is also part of the messages that we are sharing with the different friendly countries and also with the Jordanians and Egyptians. So to keeping these two peace treaties alive, this is a serious issue of concern. And the third element, and this is part of our profession as diplomats, is to look for new opportunities. And what are the new opportunities? There are not too many, unfortunately, today that we can identify. But definitely, if there will be a regime change in Syria, this can be one of them. Syria is the nexus country between Iran and Hezbollah. We see if the regime will change in Syria, this will affect seriously Iran, this will affect seriously Hezbollah, this will change the position of Jordan, and this will definitely solidify our security in the northern border. There are other developments in our region which we are looking closely. There are other superpowers, regional superpowers who are trying to position it. One is Iran, and I spoke about Iran, and we saw in the last year and a half also intentions of Iran to try to take advantage of the developments, and they were rebucked almost in every place. The Egyptians did it, Jordanians did it, and others. They don't want Iranians to mix up in their domestic affairs. We saw also Turkey. This is the second regional country in which also try, without not too many successes, I would say, also to be part of the events in the region. The third country in which is becoming very active today is Saudi Arabia. Definitely today there is a vacuum in the Arab world. The Arab League is not the same Arab League it was a year and a half ago. When there were problems or troubles or questions in this part of the world, European leaders, American leaders, Canadians, Australians were giving a first call to Mubarak to ask him, listen, there is something going on in Iraq, something going on in Yemen. Please tell us what we have to do on that. And today there is no Mubarak and there is no Egypt. So the first call is still remain without an answer. And Saudi Arabia, and also there is a small country but very active and very opportunistic, I would say, that is Qatar, who's trying to take advantage of each and every event, playing with both sides. Summing up, changes in the region, changes of the geopolitical map, great different trends going on. Still, the main two colors, I would say, of the changes are instability and unknown. We feel that those two elements will keep us busy for at least for the next few years. The developments are going on. This is not the end. This is mainly only the beginning. And this is affecting definitely our security, and we are addressing them. The third element that keeps us also occupied in the ministry is the Palestinian one. For 17 years already, we are trying to bring this conflict to a peace agreement and a peace treaty. Unfortunately, the different approaches for the different governments of Israel didn't come through. Today, we don't see on the Palestinian side an appetite to come to the table of negotiations. I know that from discussions with my interlocutors abroad, that they're also raising questions about our government, the government I represent. My answer to them is if you feel that the government of Israel is not true and his intentions to start a negotiation with the Palestinians, so the best answer that I can give to you is try to challenge them. Today we live in a transparent world. There is CNN, BBC, WikiLeaks. There are no secrets. So try to prove, and particularly now that there is a 94 MK members in the Knesset, that this government has not intentions of that, at least challenge it. Because in Israel also it's not only important what the government of Israel is doing, but also what the public opinion is thinking about. And I think that you live in this country and you feel that today, and you look to the papers, this is not the main issue that is covering the titles of our newspapers. So nevertheless, we are trying to solidify what we call the bottom-up cooperation with the Palestinians, particularly with Fayyad, try to help them in developing their economy, try to help them in cooperating on security, and trying to bring about this two-state solution that is the target and the aim of this policy to some kind of reality. Maybe that in the moment the negotiations will come through, we will not have too many issues to discuss because the reality on the ground will bring us part of the solutions. So three main points in our agenda. Iran, the upheavals in our region, the Palestinians, and parallel to that, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not only part of our security establishment, but is also developing what we call a positive agenda. We are the most important factor exporting the culture of this country. We are developing and trying to bring together scientists from Israel with all over the countries. We are having this basis of agreements that enable afterwards our citizens to go and make the necessary contacts. We are trying to help also our business community. We are working hardly trying to promote also the image of this country and what is called public diplomacy. We are cultivating not only the Jewish communities, this is part of our mandate, but also trying to develop good contacts with other communities all over the world. And we are definitely trying to not be monopolized by the security and military agenda of this country, but try to show to the public opinion in the world that this is not a state of conflict, but this is the state of Israel. And we have many achievements to show and to share with them. So this is in a nutshell what is part of our daily things that we are dealing. And again, on behalf of the ministry and on all the friends of Diego, we would like to thank you to give me the honor to address you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing the many things that you are busy with, no doubt, busier than us. Any questions, comments? This. Okay. So thank you very much and have a pleasant evening.